$4 trillion gone in a single day. The U.S. stock market didn't just take a hit, it collapsed, wiping out wealth on a scale most people can't even comprehend. Investors panicked, companies lost billions overnight, and the entire financial system shook to its core. And the cause? A trade war that was supposed to make America stronger, but instead, it triggered one of the fastest market meltdowns in history. But here's the truth no one tells you. This was predictable. Every economic disaster follows a pattern, and those who know how to read the signs don't just survive, they profit. The same governments claiming to protect their economies are often the ones lighting the match. While most people were caught off guard, the smartest investors were already moving their money before the crisis even started. What if I told you this wasn't just a freak event, but part of a much bigger game? Because once you understand how markets, politics, and power truly work, you'll never look at economic crises the same way again. The U.S. stock market lost $4 trillion in a single day, all because of escalating trade wars with China and Canada. What was supposed to be a strategic tariff move turned into an economic nightmare, shaking investor confidence to its core. History has shown that protectionist measures often lead to financial collapse, yet governments keep making the same mistakes. As stocks plummeted and the market financial world watched in disbelief, one thing became clear. This was only the beginning. And when China retaliated, it hit where it hurt the most: America's farmers. If you want to stay ahead of economic shifts and truly understand how these events shape the world, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Knowledge is power, and the right insights can change everything. When China struck back, it didn't waste time or precision. It went straight for America's agricultural heartland. With new tariffs on U.S. soybeans, corn, and pork, China effectively cut off one of its biggest suppliers, leaving American farmers in financial freefall. Entire supply chains crumbled overnight, silos overflowed with unsold crops, and once thriving farms faced the harsh reality of bankruptcy. Decades of trade relationships vanished, and with no buyers in sight, the collapse of the agricultural sector sent shockwaves through the economy. This wasn't just a trade dispute anymore, it was an economic war with real casualties. The market turbulence didn't stop at agriculture. It spread like wildfire through Wall Street, hitting the tech sector with full force. The Nasdaq plunged 4% in a single session, wiping billions off the value of companies like Tesla, Apple, and Amazon. Investors scrambled as uncertainty over global trade policies shattered confidence in even the most resilient stocks. It was a flashback to the 2018 to 2019 trade war, but this time, the stakes were even higher. As capital dried up and panic set in, the ripple effects began reshaping entire industries, proving once again that in the world of finance, nothing is untouchable. If you want to understand how global events can shake even the biggest corporations and impact your financial future, subscribe now and don't miss what comes next. The shockwaves of the trade war didn't stop with China. Canada was next. When the U.S. imposed 25% tariffs on Canadian imports, it underestimated the swift retaliation from its northern neighbor. In response, Canada hiked electricity export charges by 25%, striking directly at American manufacturers. Suddenly, production costs surged, and factories that relied on Canadian energy faced an unexpected financial strain. What was once a stable trade partnership turned into an economic standoff, proving that tariffs don't just affect international rivals. They can just as easily create tensions with close allies. And as companies scrambled to adjust, panic was already spreading through corporate America. Businesses thrive on stability, and when markets become unpredictable, corporations hit the brakes. Companies like Delta Airlines saw their profit forecasts slashed in half, while major firms across industries froze hiring and expansion plans. Investors, desperate to avoid further losses, dumped stocks at record rates, fueling a downward spiral. The confidence that once defined the American economy collapsed overnight, replaced by hesitation and fear. The domino effect was undeniable. Without investment, growth slowed, innovation stalled, and entire industries braced for impact. And while stocks plummeted, another sector was about to take a massive hit: the financial system itself. The damage wasn't confined to Wall Street. Banks, retailers, and even cryptocurrencies suffered brutal losses. Bitcoin dropped 5% in a matter of hours as investors fled risky assets in favor of government bonds and safer alternatives. The banking sector, already under pressure, saw liquidity concerns rise as businesses cut spending and loan demand shrank. Retail giants felt the squeeze, with consumer confidence at an all-time low. The financial sector, once thought to be untouchable, found itself at the mercy of a trade war spiraling out of control. And while Washington downplayed the crisis, the consequences were becoming impossible to ignore. Instead of addressing market fears, the Trump administration doubled down, insisting that short-term pain was necessary for long-term trade victories. But as the crisis deepened, economists warned that the damage wasn't temporary, it was structural. Confidence in the U.S. economy was deteriorating, and global investors were taking notice. Without a clear plan or exit strategy, the administration's approach looked more like reckless gambling than calculated policymaking. The market doesn't reward uncertainty, and the absence of a long-term vision only fueled panic. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, China was playing a different game, one that would give it a lasting advantage. While the U.S. scrambled to control the fallout, China took a different approach. It adapted. Instead of buckling under tariffs, China accelerated its push for self-sufficiency, investing heavily in domestic industries and technology. The crisis became an opportunity, strengthening China's global position while the U.S. struggled with economic instability. As supply chains shifted, Chinese companies stepped up to fill the gaps left by American firms, capturing new markets and solidifying their influence. In a trade war that was meant to weaken China, the opposite was happening. And with no diplomatic solution in sight, the U.S. found itself trapped in a self-inflicted economic mess. If you're starting to see how global power shifts happen right in front of our eyes, subscribe now and make sure you never miss these insights again. The difference between success and failure is understanding the bigger picture. With the market in turmoil, businesses struggling, and consumers feeling the pinch, one question remained. What was the plan? The problem was there wasn't one. The U.S. had backed itself into a corner, imposing tariffs without a viable exit strategy. Markets thrive on predictability, and the absence of a clear path forward only worsened the crisis. Investors lost trust, businesses halted long-term planning, and economic uncertainty became the new normal. This wasn't just a temporary dip in the markets. This was a structural collapse of economic confidence. And as the effects rippled through every sector, the long-term consequences became impossible to ignore. The damage was done, but the worst part? It wasn't over. The prolonged tariff war meant rising costs for American businesses, higher consumer prices, and a looming recession. Manufacturing jobs that were supposed to be protected vanished instead, as companies sought cheaper alternatives overseas. The very policies meant to strengthen the economy ended up weakening it, leaving future generations to deal with the fallout. And while Washington insisted it was all part of the plan, the reality was far more troubling. The trade war had exposed deep vulnerabilities, and the cost of ignorance in global economics was proving to be higher than anyone had imagined. Now, take a step back and think, how many people actually understood what was happening before the market collapsed? How many saw the warning signs and positioned themselves to come out ahead? The truth is, only a select few ever recognize the patterns behind financial disasters, while the rest scramble to pick up the pieces. But now, you're seeing what they don't want you to see. You're beginning to understand the real forces at play. Most people go through life reacting to economic events, never questioning why they happen or who actually benefits. But those who do, they gain an edge that changes everything. Imagine being among the few who anticipate these shifts before they happen, knowing when to act, when to hold back, and when to move before the crowd even realizes what's going on. That's the difference between those who struggle and those who thrive. And this is just one of countless economic events that shape the world in ways most people never notice. If you want to keep unlocking these hidden insights, if you want to be ahead of the next major shift, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Because those who truly understand the game never stop learning.